President Trump says he'll unveil a plan next week to give individuals and businesses a, quote, massive tax cut. The president spoke about it briefly during his visit to the Treasury Department earlier on Friday.
We'll be having a big announcement on Wednesday having to do with tax reform. The process has begun long ago, but it really formally begins on Wednesday, so go through it.
Stephen Moore is in San Diego. He's the Distinguished Visiting Fellow for the Project for Economic Growth at the Heritage Foundation. He's also a former economic advisor to the Trump campaign. Stephen, welcome.
Hi, great to be with you.
So the president did not offer a lot of specifics in his interview with the Associated Press. But what do you think we can expect from this tax plan?
Well, you're right. There aren't a lot of specifics, and we're all a little bit in the dark right now about what's going to be exactly going to be in that plan. But I worked with Donald Trump during the campaign on the tax plan, and I think it'll be very similar to that. And the heart of that plan is a large reduction in tax rates paid by our businesses, and that just has to happen. We tax our businesses at a higher tax rate than any other country in the world virtually that we compete with, and that has put America in a harmful competitive position where we're losing a lot of businesses to other countries. So that, I think, is going to be the heart of it. The interesting thing that, and I don't know if this is going to be in the plan or not, whether Donald Trump will also call for a dramatic simplification and reform of our 60,000-page individual income tax system. That's a lot more complicated to do, but we'll just have to wait and see. So
let's go back to corporate tax reform. You say that one of the things that was included in the tax overhaul plan that you helped co-author for then candidate Donald Trump included that. Are we talking about 35% to 15%? Are we talking about 35 to 20%? What would you consider success on that front? Is anything more than 15% acceptable?
You know, Donald Trump is a negotiator. His famous book was The Art of the Deal. So he's going to start with a 15% rate, and that'll probably get negotiated up. But I'd certainly take, 20%, somewhere in that range between 15 and 20. By the way, the rest of the world is at about 20%. So that would put us, about average where the rest of the countries that we compete with, whether it's Japan or whether it's, Canada or Ireland, Germany. Those countries are all hovering around 20%. And we just can't go forward with a rate that's twice as high what the other countries are charging their businesses. But I want to make another quick point, if I may, which is that Donald Trump, from the first time I talked to him about this, he said, we're going to cut the corporate rate, but we also want to make a lower rate available to every one of the 26.5 million small businesses in this country. So I'm fairly certain that that's going to be a central component of this plan as well.
And on the simplification, you say that's not going to be easy. If, in fact, that is still a goal of this president, do you think that the time frame is realistic of trying to get something done? You're laughing already. Why, Stephen?
Yeah, well, because it's a really difficult, I've devoted my whole life to tax reform. I worked for Ronald Reagan in the 80s. The last time we really had comprehensive tax reform was back in 1986, so over 30 years ago. It's very difficult to do because you're taking on the hordes of special interest groups that all have their little carve-outs and all their special interest provisions. And so to get tax reform, you have to take that away from those special interest groups to bring the tax rates down for everybody. I would love to see it happen. I'm just saying it's really difficult because these lobbyists are extremely vocal and strong in Washington.
So how involved, Stephen, do you think the president is in drafting this upcoming plan? Is he sitting there ironing out the details? Is he letting his advisors, you think, take the lead on this? And who from the administration, you think, are the big policy shapers and stakeholders of this plan?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I don't think Donald Trump is, sitting down night after night and drafting the plan. He's given his advisors a broad vision of what he wants to do with the tax code, make it simpler, make it more competitive for America to bring more jobs here. The two people I'm hearing are most involved right now with drafting this plan are the Treasury Secretary, Steven Mnuchin, and his National Economic Council advisor, Gary Cohn. And those two, I think, are working together to put this thing together. But of course, then it has to go through the House and Senate. The House has its own plan as well. So this is going to be like watching sausage get made.
Well, there are reports that this plan is unlikely to back House Speaker Paul Ryan's border adjustment tax. The president has voiced opposition to it in the past. Where do you think that stands?
Well, it's not very popular with a lot of businesses, you know, the Walmarts of the world and the Home Depots and the really big retailers are steadfastly against it because it would actually have a higher tax on imports, whereas things that are produced in the United States would get an advantage under that plan. You know, there's some economic advantages to doing that, but I think it's very difficult to do because you're going to line up so many opponents. I mean, think of a Walmart, the biggest corporation in America. And by the way, there are 2 Republican senators from Arkansas. I don't think they're going to want to vote for a border adjustable tax.
So I wonder if you could just give us what your sense is of the president's thinking when it comes to his philosophy regarding tax reform. Are there some overarching principles or set of beliefs that you think the president is guided by as he thinks about tax reform?
Well, it's really one word. It's jobs. And he views the tax system as a deterrent to getting the jobs in the country, and I happen to wholeheartedly agree with him on that. And so he views this as an economic development opportunity to bring a lot of factories back. You know, we've lost companies like Burger King and Medtronic, and Pfizer, one of our leading drug companies, is now talking about leaving the country and going somewhere else. You know, we're being bled to death by our tax system, and he wants to reverse that magnetic pole. So instead of those companies leaving the United States, now they would have an incentive to come. And
last question, Stephen, you had mentioned Congress. Do you get concerned that what happened with health care could happen with tax reform?
It's a nightmare if that happens. I believe that the Republicans, and I'm a Republican myself, they have to get 2 things done this year. They've got to get Obamacare substantially repealed, and they've got to get this tax bill done. You know, as an economist, I'm looking at the economy, and there was a big bounce after Donald Trump was elected and after his inauguration. So November, December, January, February were very strong months for the economy, and now it's kind of flattened out a little bit, and the markets are very jittery. And when I ask CEOs and when I ask major investors what's going on here, they say they're getting very nervous about the same fate of the health care bill is going to hit the tax bill. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Republicans are finally going to get their act together and get these done, but they're doing it the hard way.
All right. Stephen Moore, thank you so much for your time and perspective. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.